And just like that, we're back. The midweek show, views from section 400. You guys already know the deal by now. I'm Matt, joined by Jack and Brian for the midweek pod. I mean, we got a lot to go over. Obviously, a hectic weekend that just came and went. We'll get all our reaction on all that, as well as some topics pertaining to the world of sports. That's happening as we speak in real time, maybe happening tomorrow, maybe already happened earlier in the week, but nonetheless, another action-packed episode, brewing up here for you guys. So I just want to jump over. Jack, Brian, Jack, I'll start with you. Good to see you, man. How you been, dude?
Not great. No, the sports world has not been good to me over the past 2 weeks. The Jags lost heartbreaker on Monday night, choked the game away. Trevor Lawrence came away with an injury. Christian Kirk came away with an injury. Andre Cisco came away with an injury. I mean, playmakers on offense and defense, guys that you need, on the playoff run as the regular season winds up over the next few weeks. So just praying that they can get back healthy. That's NFL news. College football news. I could go on and on about Florida State's snub, but at the end of the day, I'm just gonna say I fucking hate Alabama, dude. If they ruined my Iron Bowl and Auburn, and now they ruined Florida State's hopes of making college football playoff. I mean, couldn't they just lose to Georgia? If they lose to Georgia, you got Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State, 4 13-0 teams. You can leave Texas and Alabama behind, but no, they just had to go and beat Georgia, get themselves in there, get Texas in there. It's been tough for me, Matt. Brian, hopefully it's been better for you, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a decent week. None of my teams lost. Can't say the same for you guys. I think this is the first time since we've been doing this, my teams are in the best spot simply because they didn't play. So I'll take it. But yeah, I guess we'll get right into Matt. Your birds. That was tough.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, like I kind of touched on in the pod or in the TikTok, which was kind of funny. I wanted to kind of poke at the Niner fans there a little bit, calling them scumbags, and which they are. As you could see in all the comments, I mean, I had people dropping addresses telling me to come see them, which was ridiculous. But whatever, everybody voices their opinion, frustration, however they want to. Luckily, no, there was no altercations with me having to go fight 49er fans over a TikTok post. Like, grow up, man, grow up. You know who you are out there. Grow up. But yeah, TikTok first TikTok for us that really popped off like that. A lot of angry 49er fans. And some upset Eagle fans who were just trying to cope along with me. But yeah, it was really great to see the TikTok pop off and blow up. Only up from here. And look, I mean, the Eagles got their ass handed to them. There's no better way to put it. And it happened at home, which sucks even more. The Niners get to validate their NFC Championship game, which doesn't overturn it. Hate to break it to them because they're still delusional and think that it overturns it from beating us at home. But whatever. I mean, like I said, I mean, I might be a diehard fan, but I'm not unrealistic. I mean, the Niners were the better team. They got the job done. They came in and they had a game plan and they executed it. But I don't think that takes away from, the first quarter, the Eagles kind of dominated. I mean, they drove right down the field twice. I think if they score a touchdown on those first two drives, it changes the game completely. Obviously held to 3 points on both drives. They stopped the Niners twice. And then, Eagles were only able to come away for 6 points. And, the Niners drove right down and got that touchdown, which it seemed like the Eagles had all the momentum and all the Niners had to do was get that touchdown, and it completely flipped. I know I said the Niners guy punched the coach. Obviously, I know I've met Dom before for the Brandon Graham show down in South Philly at Chickies and Pete. So I know he's the security guard. I just thought I'd get a good rise out of people for calling him a coach. And clearly it worked because people were not happy that I called him a coach. So you all got played. You played yourself. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty funny that everybody's calling me out saying that he's not a coach. I know he's not a coach. Yeah, I mean, look, the Birds lost. Jack, I'll jump it over to you. The Jags obviously didn't have I don't even want to say not a great game because like they put up 31 points. I mean, they just I guess Jake Browning came into that game and they executed what they weren't airing it out. They weren't putting him in bad situations. It was dink and dunk, get Joe Mixon involved and give yourself a shot, and that's kind of what they did.
Yeah, no, the Jags played fine. I mean, at the end of the day, they still showed why they're a top 10 team in the league, with Trevor Lawrence, of course. But no, they were moving the ball on offense, stopping Joe Mixon at times when they needed to, getting some stops on third down. But no, Jake Browning had himself an absolute fucking day, dude. I mean, Brian called it, unfortunately, on last week's pod. He said Jake Browning's going to carve him up for 3 touchdowns, and he did. I mean, one was rushing, but he definitely did carve him up for 3 touchdowns and gave my Jags the shellacking. So the defense needs to shape up going into next week and going into the playoffs. But now offensively, we need to get healthy as well. We got a matchup against the Browns this week, tough defense. Matchup against the Ravens the following week, another tough AFC North defense. So I don't know what the plan is for Trevor. I don't know if we keep him out for a game, 2 games. We might need him to keep this division lead alive. Texans and the Colts are both 1 game behind us right now, sitting at 7-5. So it's not like we can have Trevor Lawrence just sit out until the playoffs. We're going to need to win a couple more of these games as the regular season wraps up.
Yeah, I agree, Ben. Brian, I mean, your sports teams are irrelevant, so the only thing you have to go for is root against us. How ecstatic were you on Sunday and Monday night as you got to watch our teams taken out?
Well, I did take the Eagles this week with you, so it kind of
Oh, so
stung.
you jinxed it. Oh, there it is.
But yeah, this was the one week I could have done an anti-Eagles parlay, and it probably would have hit. I mean, all the guys went crazy. Debo had 3 touchdowns. Brock Purdy went off. I probably would have taken George Kittle's over, and he didn't have a great game, so it probably wouldn't have hit anyway. But yeah, I was happy to see the Eagles possibly turn into frauds as we move on here. The Jaguars, I've been calling frauds forever. I told you Jake Browning would carve them up, and that's exactly what happened. So without Trevor Lawrence, like a high ankle sprain is no joke, especially when you have to pass from the pocket and you're using your lower body to throw footballs. And then he has the rushing ability too. That's going to be limited. I don't see him playing in these next 2 games against really tough defenses. And with the Houston Texans a game behind, the Jaguars aren't only rattled about the number 1 seed, they're rattled about the division right now. So I wouldn't want to be in Jack's position, although I am a Giants fan, and we all know how that's going. Although Tommy DeVito still have him throwing footballs and coming out with the Sopranos theme song. But
Ridiculous.
yeah, I had a decent day. I liked seeing the Panthers game go over. I loved seeing Mike Evans get another 1,000-yard season.
A couple other games around the league here that were important as I'm looking at it. Cardinals upset the Steelers. No one really saw that coming. We did have 2 weather delays in that game, which was a little weird. Chargers and Patriots was a weird one, 6-0. I mean, that game sucked. They couldn't get anything going there. And then, the Lions finally figured it out. They put up some points. Their defense is still a mess, but yeah, I mean the Lions keep themselves in the mix for winning that division, obviously. Which it's interesting to look at the Packers beating the Chiefs as the Packers are starting to put together a late season surge. If the Lions keep tripping up, I know they won last week, but I wouldn't count the Packers out just yet. Just for the Chiefs to not be this, and I even said it. I said they were like, a lock out of the AFC based on what they did in the early season. And the landscape's really changed over the last couple weeks or month in the NFL, like drastically. And I guess that's just what it is when you play this game. But annoying sometimes how quick the NFL regular season goes by because it really is a very electric time of year. But obviously, the playoffs bring a whole new, just angle of excitement for all its fans. So it'll be obviously exciting as we roll into the holiday season, but not only the holiday season, playoff football, which I kind of want to jump into next. Speaking about college football, the Final Four set. I don't know if anybody watching jumped in on our Twitter space, but we had some instant reactions. So definitely check us out on Twitter in terms of spaces. We have a bunch of people who hop on. People are always requesting to talk. If you're lucky, maybe we'll get you on there for a minute or two, say your piece, and kind of get a live reaction of how you're feeling, pertaining to whatever the topic is. But, it was dominated by college football because obviously we got the rankings, which I do want to say was really weird how they announced the Final Four Sunday at like 12 o'clock. There was no promotion of that. There was it was just like a sneak attack. It was like, oh, NFL game day's over. Right before the NFL slate, here's the top four. It seemed like a very random time to do it. But to run through it, look, Michigan, Alabama, ridiculous head coaching matchup in game number one, and Texas and Washington, or Washington, Texas, however you want to word it, should be a shootout. I mean, should be a very exciting, entertaining game. So I want to jump over to you, Jack. Obviously, you're pretty ticked off by Florida State not making it, which honestly, I know you're not going to like it. I think was the right call based on them not having the quarterback. If they have the quarterback and they go undefeated, I think 100% they're in. They don't have the key player, and I think mix that in with them struggling against Louisville. It wasn't a good look for them. So that's the committee's decision. I think it as just an absolute bystander, no skin in the game for any of the teams. I think it was the right call putting the the teams who are healthier and have better quarterbacks going right now. But I mean, I know you kind of already touched on it, man. But where are you seeing this kind of where are you coming down on all this?
Yeah, what you're saying right now is what the average college football fan is saying. I'm not calling y'all casuals. I'm just saying that's what the average college football fan thinks, that the committee got it right. Florida State without the quarterback doesn't deserve to be in the college football playoff. Obviously I am a Florida State guy. I am going to have a little bit of bias here, but what I will say to your points there is, they lose the quarterback, they lose the backup quarterback. They go and play Louisville with the third stringer, and what do? They struggle on offense as expected, but that defense played one of the best defensive college football games I've ever watched. It reminds me of watching Auburn, big SEC guys, at home in Jordan Hare, just absolutely clamping down on a good offense in the SEC. I mean, they played possessed, and to fault the other 100 players and coaches in that organization, all of the millions of Florida State fans, all because of one man got hurt. I don't think it's right. I mean, forget the fans, but just those coaches and players who went all season, every game, practice, games, won everything they could, handled all the adversity they could, still came out on top every single game. To keep them out, I think it's just wrong. It sets a bad precedent, for college football, for, things in general. I mean, you could be a champion, go on absolutely undefeated. No one can beat you, but you still don't have the opportunity. It's a tough look. It's a really tough look for the college football playoff committee. It's pretty bullshit that you can't just say, hey, let's figure this out. Let's figure out a way where we can get them in. I mean, make it a 16 playoff for all I care. Add in an emergency game, have them play Ohio State. I mean, it's just, there's so many things that you can do, and to just do absolutely nothing about it and keep this Florida State team out, it's not right.
Well, dude, I suggested the emergency addition of two teams too, and Brian said it would be just an absolute logistical nightmare. So it didn't happen. But Brian, as no skin in the game, how are you coming down on this? Or did the committee get it right, or are you on Jack's side with Florida State got snubbed, and the players are heartbroken, which is true. I mean, they did get snubbed, and if you're a Florida State guy or a player, I mean, that is absolute devastation.
Yeah, Jack, you mentioned setting a bad precedent. The committee kind of didn't have to worry about that because we're moving to 12 next year, so that was kind of a cop out for them. Um, but so I don't have a problem with Florida State getting left out. What I do have a problem with is the committee kind of contradicting themselves. They added TCU last year with one loss, but the Big 12 champ. TCU was clearly not one of the best 4 teams in the country. And then to say this year you keep FSU out, undefeated Power 5 champ, because they're not one of the best teams in the country, which is fair. That's what the committee is supposed to do. But we've seen in the past them put in teams that clearly are not the best but deserve it. So it's just a bad look for the committee. It shows you why we're moving to 12. It should really be 8, but 12 is fine.
The more the merrier, man.
Yeah, you say the more the merrier, but then you look at the matchups this year. One of them would have been Ole Miss taking on Georgia, and Georgia, that game already happened, and Georgia beat them by 17. So there's definitely the ability for that, but this could be debated forever. At the end of the day, next year we're going to be debating like 9-3 LSU and 9-3 Oklahoma State, and neither of those teams is going to win a title. So it's a lot better than debating an undefeated team against one-loss Alabama. But one of the things that stuck out to me, so during the show, which also horrible timing, we could talk about that forever. Michigan had a live stream of their reaction, and they were clearly hoping they would play Florida State. And as soon as they saw Florida State in at that 5, you got like 2 claps and a bunch of just oh no gasps from every single player in that room. And for some reason, they let that video get out on social media. And you already know Nick Saban and that whole Alabama team has that going on the whole practice facility for the whole week, whole month. Just Michigan's scared. They are scared of Alabama. I'm starting to think Alabama, I was worried they were going to sneak in. I've been worried for months. I'm starting to get worried they're going to win it all here. And I know
Alabama might win the whole damn thing.
I know we have the Huskies future and we'll be rooting for it. But honestly, Alabama might be the best team in the playoff right now.
I mean, dude, they're red hot, most experienced coach. Their quarterback, the growth I've seen out of that kid from when they lost to Texas to now is some of the most just amazing growth I've seen out of a quarterback in a while. I mean, this guy looked like borderline unserviceable in that Texas game that they played. And he's really figured it out as the weeks have gone on. And I'm sure coaching is a massive part of that. But he's a guy, Milrow, he's figured it out, man. And that's why they're so scary now.
Yeah. Sorry, Alec, just real quick. I was going to say Milrow is the best offensive weapon in the college football playoff right now. That's definitely debatable. That's totally fair and up for debate. I know Penix is an animal over there in Washington, but I think Jaden Milrow is easily, the best offensive weapon right now, and that's what most explosive offensive player as well, and he can really do damage. Alabama is going to be my favorite to win this title. Believe it or not, sneaking in, 4 seed, don't care. They're the SEC team. People always want to say, "Oh, the SEC is so overrated." You always got to have an SEC team in there. I was hoping that Florida State would get in, not Alabama, but it didn't really matter. Alabama's in. I think they're going to win the whole thing. I think it'll be Alabama against Washington in the final with an Alabama win. And
they got a shot.
And they got a shot. Might jump off a bridge. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I like that. That kind of transitions into the point I was going to make. I like the Washington and Alabama pick for the final. Just one more thing going back to the committee putting in the best 4 teams. If you're going to do that and keep Florida State out, I think there's an argument to be made that Georgia probably should have gotten in over Texas.
Yeah, that was my prediction before. I thought Georgia and Alabama honestly were locks to get in, but obviously it creeped.
I mean, Georgia was clearly one of the best. I think right now they're still one of the 4 best teams, and Texas deserves to be in, especially if you put Alabama in. But if you're going to say the top 4 teams, Georgia is I think undeniably a top 4 team.
Well, you have to look at the head to head there, and I think that's the only reason why Texas is at 3 and Bama's at 4 is because of that head to head game. I mean, Texas beats Bama, Bama beats Georgia. I mean, just follow that progression. Obviously, you can't just say Texas would beat Georgia, but that is the line of thinking. That's the progression there, and that's ultimately, I'm sure, how the College Football Playoff Committee looked at it, and why Texas is sitting at 3, Bama at 4. And Georgia might be a top 4 team, but how can you say that they're better than Bama when they just lost them? How can you say that they're better than Texas when they lost to Bama, Bama lost to Texas? I mean, and then what are you going to do at that point? Washington or Michigan, your wins weren't quality enough, even though you're 13-0 with a Power 5 conference championship. You're not going to make the college football playoff. No, they're just going to reserve that for Florida State. Let Michigan and Washington go on with it.
I mean, look, we get, they almost had that like breathing room to make a wild decision like that and snubbing Florida State because, like you said, Brian, we get 12 teams next year. So it's not like, they'll have another tough call to make. And look, if it blows up in their face and somehow one of these teams gets blown out, it's like, oh, well, what if Florida State was in there? But, I think it's because they already did a trial run with Cincinnati. That didn't work out well. They did kind of the trial run with TCU. Obviously, they pulled off the upset, but I mean, dude, 65-7 in the national championship or whatever that final score was. That just can't happen. Like that's bad. So
I'll tell you one thing. If Florida State beats Georgia in that Orange Bowl, if I'm a Florida State fan, I am claiming a national championship.
I would be more fired up as a Florida State fan if they beat Georgia. That's when I would really start to have an issue. But again, I think, if Florida State played in the SEC this year and were undefeated, then do they get in?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
The ACC is not a good conference. I mean, it's just not that good. And I'm not taking away from Florida State. If they had their quarterback, they're 1,000% in the Final Four. But I think it factored into the committee's decision on obviously the whole quarterback thing, but their strength of schedule obviously was just not up to par with some of these other teams.
And that's the stigma with the ACC and football when it comes to college football is that it's not as competitive as the SEC or the Big Ten or whatever. And there is a valid point there for most years, but this year the ACC outplayed the SEC. They beat them head to head. So to say that ACC is some inferior play comparative to the SEC this year is not a valid argument, and it's again, just another reason why I think Florida State got snubbed here.
But no, I don't want to jump off of this conversation just yet. I do. Who did Florida State beat in the SEC? So Florida number 1. Florida finished with a losing record?
Yeah, Florida. Well, Florida finished 5-7. But you could say they were a bad team, but you could also say that was a rivalry game, and Florida was playing to get into a bowl. They needed that win to go bowling.
And that was also, I think, Florida State was playing without the quarterback, right?
Yeah, their second string, and then he got hurt in that game.
So, I mean, I guess they got it done there, but Florida was not a good team. I get it, whatever, go bowling, big rivalry game. And then what was the other game that they beat? And don't say Vanderbilt.
No, it's a good win, but it's also Jordan Travis. So they beat LSU week 1.
Okay, so Jordan Travis had a lot to play with that. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not arguing against it. I'm not a any skin of the game here type of fan for any of these teams. We've seen it in years past when not the best team makes it in because of their record, and we see a disaster in the playoff. Like I don't know. Again, this is a casual take because I don't have a diehard team to root for, but I mean, I think these 2 games for the playoff are the best matchups for what the field has to work with. And that's like, I'm sorry, I don't want to go watch Florida State play without their quarterback. I don't really need to see it. I don't think it'll be as competitive. If they have their quarterback, they beat Louisville by 40 points. Instead, they win by 10, which, I think if they won that game by 40 points, they're in the Final
They're
Four.
definitely in. Yeah.
But they struggled immensely to move the ball, and obviously their defense is still loaded. But if you put them in the Final Four, I don't think you're going to get the better product right now because of the quarterback. Again, the committee reserves the right to to analyze based on who the best team is, not just only on record, but personnel and things like that. So again, as a casual take, I think the committee got it right because these two matchups are absolutely electric. Texas and Washington should be super fun, and Michigan, Alabama should be just, Harbaugh versus Saban. What more could you ask for?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm just the contradictory nature of the committee is what I have an issue with.
I understand. They flip flop and they aren't consistent with doing it, right? So they've already in the past have put the undefeated team in just because they're undefeated and didn't work out. So now you say, well, you already did it. So even though it didn't work out, you got to put the undefeated team in. But I think they saw those teams they put in, example, Cincinnati, was TCU wasn't even undefeated though, right?
They lost a game, yeah.
They did lose.
They won the Pac-12.
Right. But I mean, Cincinnati was a good example of great team, undefeated. Oh my gosh, this team's got a shot. You have to include them in the Final Four. They did, and it didn't work out. So again, I think it's blame those other teams who were undefeated and got blown out in the Final Four. That kept the committee hesitant, by putting a third string quarterback on Florida State, in the Final Four. But that's enough of the college football talk. The only thing I want to know here, Brian, is who's winning the Heisman Trophy.
It's going to be Jaden Daniels.
It's going to be Jaden Daniels on a, 4-loss, 5-loss LSU team?
3-loss.
3? Oh, they only had 3? Okay. I thought they were a little worse than that.
They're a decent team. They're playing in a New Year's Bowl.
All right.
And
I'll give it to them.
You can't hate on them because their defense is absolute garbage. He did everything he could to win every game. He went crazy, and his defense just let him down every week, really. So
I remember a couple of those games though at the end. Was it the Ole Miss game where it was 45-42 final score?
56-55.
Yeah, it was absolutely out of control. So I agree. His defense did him no favors, and I guess this kid will win the Heisman because we don't get the final, the semifinal or the playoff until January, and the Heisman gets announced next week?
They vote at the end of the championship weekend. So that was Bo Nix still had a shot if he put up a big game and beat Washington, but that didn't happen. So before we do move on from college football talk, because I know we got a lot of college basketball to cover and some NBA to cover. So obviously bowl season coming up. I'm an Auburn guy, Jackson Auburn guy. We will have Music City Bowl talk, best bowl in the country, biggest game in the country.
Is that obviously that's in Nashville?
Yeah, that's in Nashville and Nissan Stadium. They're playing Maryland. I got a few buddies from UMD, so we'll have them on for a small segment to talk that game. And then hopefully have some more guests from alumni around the country just to preview some of these bowl games. So lots of good content to look out for coming up here as we approach the new year. So yeah, look out for that. It's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, as we roll into bowl season, look, and that'll be fun, right? Both teams might not have had, rock star seasons, but you got some buddies from Maryland. It creates a nice little matchup for you guys to have Auburn playing and Maryland playing. And honestly, it's kind of like a halfway point for both schools. Nashville's right in the, Maryland's a little more north, Auburn's a little more south. I'm assuming Auburn's probably a little closer, but you get the point. It's kind of close to the middle.
Yeah, so Auburn, I think Auburn's 3.5 hours, and then Maryland will probably be more like 7 or 8, but it's going to be
It's, you
mostly
know what
Auburn.
I mean.
But I mean,
Yeah,
the way
it's
Auburn plays bowl games, it's going to be a close game and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I know we stepped away from college football, but Villanova is playing in an FCS quarterfinal game this weekend. I believe they play South Dakota State. So if you don't want to tune in to the GMAC Bowl or the Military Bowl or the Pinstripe Bowl or whatever those nonsense bowl games are, we got some FCS football this weekend. And, me being a Villanova fan, because I have, 10 plus, my dad went there, aunts and uncles, grandfather, got a lot of alumni, went to Nova. So pretty exciting weekend. That game will be on ESPN. So I know I got a lot of family members fired up for it. And yeah, I'm going to get fired up for it too. Why not, man? It's a playoff football. I don't care what you call it, FCS, fake D1. It's still football, man. So I'm pretty hyped up for it, and that's some good stuff there.
Yeah, I'll probably miss out on that one. I'm going to be watching Army Navy instead. But, yeah, Villanova, electric atmosphere, quarterfinal, taking on the dynasty that is South Dakota State. So both of Dakota States are just very good at
Yeah,
football.
I think North Dakota State is also still alive. So yeah, man. I mean, dude, they're obviously going to be underdogs this weekend. They probably aren't going to win, but like, dude, they're like Nova's like plus 9,000 to win that whole thing, and they're in the quarterfinals. Like if they win somehow on Saturday, that'll go from like plus 8,000 like all the way down to like plus 500.
Well, there you go.
So maybe a little sprinkle if you're super degenerate. And that's what you'll get over here at section 400. You'll get the plays that nobody's looking at. It's the plays that we're looking at, and it's why we're handing it out. I'm not confident in them winning the game on Saturday, nor obviously winning the FCS title, which Nova hasn't won since 2009 with Chris Whitney and Matt Seizure. We got to jump over to the hardwood, college basketball. There's been some electric games over the last like week or so, man. I mean, UConn and Kansas got together and played. I know wasn't there a game last night that was pretty electric?
Two great games, Illinois FAU and UConn and UNC. We've had the SEC, ACC Challenge, UNC, Tennessee, Duke, Arkansas. There's been some great matchups, and
even though Villanova and Kansas State played last week, and I know that was close down or last night. That was close coming down to the wire, and Nova couldn't get it figured out. Look, that Nova team has talent, man. They should be a lot better than the way they're playing. This is just a total like, dude, Kyle Neptune. Like they got to get a different coach in there. He's not the guy. He's overmatched. He's not experienced enough. He came from Fordham, and it wasn't like, oh, he was at Fordham for 30 years. I think he was there for less than 5 years. So I'm not really sure why that was the route they went for a coaching hire. But that's the way they went. But I kind of was just highlighting those crazy games that we have already seen over the last couple days or weeks here. I mean, Brian, what do you have on it? We saw Kansas and UConn. We saw those crazy games last night. I know we got Texas and Marquette tonight. I mean, are you in full college basketball swing mode right now, or what?
Yeah. So back to sports that people care about. I have been high on college basketball pretty much the last 2 weeks, just consuming every game I can here. And I can tell you that two teams really stick out to me right now that I think can actually win the title. And believe it or not, those aren't Kansas and those aren't Purdue. The Arizona Wildcats, of course, they're ranked number 1 right now, but they're ranked number 1 for a reason. This team is really good. All 5 starters are averaging over 13 points. Caleb Love, of course, the transfer from UNC, been going crazy. That front court consisting of Omar Ballo and Montejunis Krivas. I hope I got that name right. Both averaging double figures, both averaging over 6 rebounds. And then you have the transfer from San Diego State, Kashad Johnson, Just he brings the San Diego State defense. He's a rebounder. He's a scorer. This team can score on all levels of the court. They can defend. I don't think they're going to lose many games. Dare I say they could go undefeated. I really, really love Arizona.
I don't know about undefeated. It's obviously so hard, especially they'll get to some of those Pac-12 games where they're going to have to go on the road. And you can be just so amazing in college basketball, but going on the road is truly a tough task. Having to play some of these, it could be a random Tuesday night against, a team. They're ranked number one coming into a team. Give me an example, a Colorado or, UCLA. Just one of these teams can knock them off if they're playing at home. That's what the home court advantage is in college basketball.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how they play out. But again, like you said, two high quality transfers move in over there to go along with already a pretty solid, just players who are on the team who are already good. Add those guys in, and now they have the number one team in the making. Undefeated obviously is a tall task, but if there's a team to do it, I guess it's them. And I want to touch on the Kentucky Wildcats are coming to Philly this weekend to take on Penn at the Wells Fargo Center. Saturday game, Kentucky taking on Penn. I mean, dude, that's just awesome to have them in the area for a game.
Yeah, that game might have 200 points scored in it. I mean, we all know about Kentucky, and we all know they don't play defense. And then Penn, of course, knocked off Nova. Very good backcourt down there. So that's going to be a fun game. Penn is a sleeper team in the Ivy League. I know Princeton's good enough to get a 9 or 8 seed in the tournament if they can win the Ivy League, but Penn can knock them off. I really like Penn, so that should be a fun game. But yeah, college basketball this year is just so much fun. The other team the other team I really love, the UConn Huskies. You talked about Arizona transfers. This kid, Cameron Spencer, went off against UNC last night, transferred from Rutgers. He pairs with Tristan Newton, who I call the LeBron James of basketball, in a write-up. And that's not an ironic line off of the whole Pawn Stars thing when they call Christian Pulisic the LeBron James of soccer. Tristan Newton's the LeBron James of college basketball. This kid's a guard. He's like 6'2", and he's averaging 8 rebounds a game, 6 assists. He's putting up 17 points a game. Dan Hurley's team is locked and loaded. This team could easily get back to the Final Four and cut down the nets. I am praying we see Arizona and UConn in that final. These two teams, I just think, have set themselves apart, at least right now, and I want to see them in the Final Four.
Yeah, and I think they got a shot to get there, right? And I know in the notes here we have, right, we can't sleep on Creighton. They're starting to turn it on and get locked and loaded. You also put in Duke's in shambles. They lost to Georgia Tech and Arkansas, which I think Georgia Tech's a little more competitive this year than what they've been in years past. But still, you can't lose to Georgia Tech. And again, like I said, I really do think they're a little more competitive than what they've been. But yeah, bad losses for Duke, could just be a result of the new coaching regime trying to figure stuff out over there.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Duke's kind of young too, and they'll figure it out. But yeah, you can't lose a Sunday matinee game on the CW to Georgia Tech. That's just one of those games in the past you check the box score and you're like, oh, Duke played today and they won by 40.
Yeah. Oh,
not a game you lose.
Yeah, no. And then we'll jump right in to the SEC, which is off to a little bit of a rocky start to the season here, but Auburn dropping a game to Appalachian State. I watched that game, and Appalachian State's good. I get it. It was at App State, so that's a tougher game for Auburn on the road. I know in years past, or even this year, Auburn is not a good team on the road. So yeah, I mean, I'll let you kind of go on a rant there because that's your War Eagle team. Tough loss to App State, man.
Yeah, so the first time App State has won a game against a Power 5 school at home in the past 20 years, partly because no program is dumb enough to go on the road to App State. So I'm not sure what the thinking was there from Auburn's athletic department, but
they could have got paid a lot of money to do it.
maybe. But yeah, they
I
they
don't know.
make
I
enough
mean,
money.
I know, but they could, what if you don't know what the agenda or narrative was, dude?
I guess not. But yeah, that's a game. They were favored by 9. They lost. They have struggled scoring the basketball. Aiden Holloway, 25. Aiden Holloway shooting 25% from the field the last couple games. He's young. He's 18 years old, so he'll figure it out. But if Auburn's going to make a run this year, they really need him to be their second best scorer behind Janai Broome. It's the same story with them. They're great on defense, and they just struggle on offense, especially on the road, like you said. But I mean, the way my teams have been going this year, Auburn's probably going to miss out on the tournament. I'm hoping that won't be the case, but we'll see.
I think they still have a shot to get in, but they got a lot to fix, and they just don't seem to have a guy who can take over and just like, oh, okay, we need a bucket here, we need to do this here, we need to hit a big three, and they just, sometimes they just seem lost on offense, like they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, they have Janai Broome, and he's a dog down low, but the issue is he can't really shoot the ball from outside of 10 feet. So
And
that hurts.
I watched him chuck up a couple threes, and it was ugly.
Yeah. So that hurts, especially once you get into March. You need guard play. So we'll see about them. But
It's
the
tough,
rest,
dude. The SEC's in shambles, like you kind of said. Kentucky's very young. I said I was like, how is this team, ranked 16 in the country? Like they should be a top 10 team. Clearly, already starting to show the growing pains there, as they're just so young, dude. Like they're so young. If this is a team, like if all these guys are like sophomores, this team is like going crazy. But the fact they're all like 18 years old, 19, whatever, super young, first time playing in on the collegiate level, it's tough. It's tough to adapt and adjust to that. It's a big step, and I think that's kind of what we're already seeing here, and why I know I'm pretty high on Kentucky, but like you said, dude, that Penn game this Saturday at Wells Fargo Center could be very interesting.
mhm.
Um, but again, DJ Wagner's coming home. Camden native, so he might put on a show in front of his home crowd. But I think we could look. They're putting it at Wells Fargo Center for a reason, so it could be something to look out for. Definitely one to tune into. But yeah, obviously you touched on UConn. UNC still very good, which Nova beat. I know we rip on
They did.
Nova, but Nova did beat them. It was in the Bahamas or Atlantis, which Nova in years past usually plays very well in that tournament. But nonetheless, they beat them. So obviously, good win for Nova there, but Nova has their own issues to figure out. Like I touched on earlier, Kyle Neptune, very very poor coach, in my opinion. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he just doesn't seem to have it. They have it. They have a talented team, talented roster, some nice transfer portal pieces coming in. Haven't been able to really put it all together, and I think it's a direct correlation to some weak coaching.
Yeah, if things get really bad for Villanova, that'll be a win that could keep them off of the bubble. I
Yeah,
think UNC is good enough with RJ Davis and Armando Bacot and then Harrison Ingram there that they're probably going to win the ACC, and a decent ACC at that, now that Clemson is just very good. So that will be a big win for them down the stretch.
yeah, it's going to be one that the committee's going to consider when they're going through it. Because obviously, with the likes of Creighton, Marquette, and UConn, Nova's not winning the Big East tournament. Obviously, anything can happen in tournaments, but let's be real, they're probably not winning it. And I know it's like college basketball. We say it now, and it's like teams just get hot and win games. It's like, oh, there's no shot they can win, and they win. So I do understand that can happen in college basketball, but dude, UConn, Marquette, and Creighton are all just so good. I think
Mhm.
Nova will, besides those three teams, they'll be able to stay afloat in the Big East. Xavier isn't that good. DePaul is horrific. Um, Seton Hall, Nova should beat. Nova should beat St. John's. So there's a lot of wins in that conference schedule up there for the taking for them. So, and if if you're going to tell me they're not going to play, some of these better teams close at home, I think they could steal a game from Creighton at home. Maybe steal one from Marquette. I don't think they're beating UConn. But yeah, I mean, anything can happen on your home floor. And other than those three teams, there's a lot of the Big East schedule is up for grabs. So even obviously Nova probably won't win the Big East tournament. It'd be nice to see if they could win a couple games to really solidify their wins. But I could see them being like an 11 seed or 12 seed, maybe in the 8-9 spot. I don't know if they'll be good enough to wheel their way up to into like the 6 range. Maybe they do. I don't know, but I think they'll still have a couple bad losses in there to where the committee can't catapult them up that high. But look, I could see them being a sneaky 10 or 11 seed. I mean, if they get locked in as the 11 seed, I mean, if I'm the 6 team, I don't want to play them.
Yeah, so last little bit on Nova here. Andy Katz over at ncaa.com does his bracketology every week. His last one, he had the Villanova Wildcats as a 4 seed in the Midwest region. I don't know what crack Andy Katz is
That was
smoking.
probably before. Was that before some of those losses?
That was when they had the 3 losses to the Philadelphia schools.
Well, again, I think Andy Katz is like low-key a Nova guy, so that's probably why. I just, based on the way they've been playing, I don't see that. I think putting them in the 7 to 10 range is fair, to say the least. I think that's fair for what they are.
Yeah.
Because again, they still hover around that top 25 ranking. So I think they have a shot to end the season in that range of 20 to 25. And like I said, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to see them maybe a 6 seed, maybe, but even that I think is a little high. FAU lost to Illinois, but Illinois is a good team. That was a road game for FAU. They obviously are playing a way tougher schedule now that they're already kind of put on the map. So I'm not really worried about them. I think they'll still gel and grow together as they play this tougher competition. It'll only make them better. Then they'll go into, what are they? Are they in the AAC?
AAC.
Yeah. So obviously that'll, they should be able to cakewalk through that tournament. I don't know any other. I guess is Cincinnati pretty decent in that league?
This year they're not great. The league sucks. Memphis is probably
is Houston still in that league?
Houston's in the Big 12 now.
Oh, they are in the Big 12. Okay, so yeah, Memphis. Again, FAU should be able to do relatively decent in that conference.
Yeah, I think that game last night spoke more about Illinois than it did FAU. This kid, Terrence Shannon Jr. on Illinois, is good enough to be the Kemba Walker of the NCAA tournament, or the Shabazz Napier. He is averaging over 20 points a game. He put up 33 on FAU at Madison Square Garden. Huge arena, the Mecca, all the stars ball out there. This kid balled out. And he is good enough to lead a decently talented Illinois team deep into March. It's going to be tough in that Big Ten to stack up enough wins to get a good draw. They could end up at like the 9 line, and then in those 8-9 games, you never know. But this kid, him and Tristan Newton are probably my 2 favorite players in college basketball right now. And I never thought I would be big on Illinois basketball just because they're always pretty pitiful to watch, even when they had Ayo Disamanu, whatever.
Dasamanu, or whatever that guy's name was.
Yeah,
dude, look, they're always like somewhat relevant, but never a team that you're scared of in March.
Yeah, and that's kind of what they are. But this year they're kind of that. But this Shannon Jr. kid is good enough to carry them in March. So if they can stack up enough wins to get a decent seed, I will be looking at them and probably penciling them in as a second weekend team.
Possibly, that's a team you can maybe say, 3 or 4 seed.
Yeah, if they can play well in the Big Ten, that's not looking that great this year. Now that Michigan State is like a bubble team.
Michigan State's horrible. They were 4. They were
They were a
4.
4 seed, and they're looking like a bubble team.
They're horrible. That was like how is that much of a miss
A
by
horrible
whoever
miss.
created the rankings? But yeah, I know we're kind of dragging on here. We've been covering a lot of sports conversation and content, which is good. You know, the sports world's popping off right now. This is the time of year where everything's going on. You know, when we roll into April, May, and June, and baseball's only going on, you know, we're gonna have to start wheeling NASCAR conversation into it with how dry sports content. You know, are we gonna start wheeling in XFL picks? We're gonna do an XFL show every week.
WNBA. WNBA.
WNBA. I know you're a big WNBA guy over there. So yeah, so obviously a little bit of a longer show, but there's a lot going on, and that will roll into our final topic here. And you know, who better to talk on it than our NBA in-season tournament insider, Brian? What's the update as we're getting close to Vegas here, man?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can believe this, but LeBron James is 38 years old. And this guy just took over a game, a playoff atmosphere type game in the quarterfinal of the in-season tournament. Dropped 31, 8, and 11. Had 5 steals to beat the Suns. The Lakers, I mean, LeBron James might mess around and add an NBA Cup to his trophy case. And does that make him better than MJ on the all-time list? I mean, MJ never got an NBA Cup.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely an angle to take, but I think it just shows that LeBron still can turn it on and turn it off whenever he wants, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he
this
took over that fourth quarter last night. It was very impressive. The Lakers will be playing the Pelicans, who you were very high on in our preview of the NBA season.
well, yeah, I mean, CJ McCollum like magically got a collapsed lung, so that kind of like slowed down their start a little bit, but yeah, I think once they're fully healthy, which I know McCollum's back, so he should be trending in the right direction. That team should start trending in the right direction. But look out for them to be good. And I haven't checked the standings like in the last 2 days, but are the Orlando Magic a wagon?
Yeah, they speaking of snubs, we talked about FSU getting snubbed. The Orlando Magic had a tough tiebreaker draw. They should have probably been in this knockout stage, but yeah, they went 3-1 in the in-season tournament. They've been winning regular season games. This team, they're very good. Franz Wagner has just turned it
Dude,
on
I
this
think
year.
they're a top 4 seed in the East right now.
They're a really good team.
And I think at one point they were a half game back of the Celtics for the 1 spot.
hmm They
So
they
I mean, they're a team nobody really thought about. And Paulo Banchero, this guy is a superstar in the making.
yeah, they have him. They have Jalen Suggs. Markel Fultz is still decent. I talked about Wagner. He has Franz Wagner's brother Mo is doing well.
What's it?
So
Cole Anthony.
Cole Anthony's there. Yeah, like this team just has a lot of decent players, and they've been playing together for a couple years now. So just the chemistry is there. But they
Your
are,
your your boy from Florida State, Jonathan Isaac. You
yeah,
were a huge Isaac guy for whatever reason.
yeah. I love Jonathan Isaac. But his injury history has given him about 14 minutes a game now, which he does well in those 14 minutes. But I don't see him becoming a big part of that rotation in the near future. But in the east side of the in-season tournament, we have the Bucks after they completely dismantled the Knicks last night, put up like 150 points against the Indiana Pacers. And ESPN executives were face palming. They were ready to jump off a cliff watching the Pacers take down the Celtics, ruining a Celtics Bucks ESPN quarterfinal or semifinal. But the Indiana Pacers, they are a fun team. Tyrese Halliburton is going crazy. He was, I think, the 7th person in NBA history to have a 30-point triple-double with no turnovers. And two people on that list are Nikola Jokic in the past 2 weeks, which was pretty funny to look at. But yeah, the Pacers taking on the Bucks, the Lakers taking on the Pelicans. I said it before, I think the Lakers and LeBron James win this NBA Cup. Probably Bucks versus Lakers. I don't know.
No, you were high on the Miami Heat winning
Well,
it all.
I was high on the Miami Heat, but they could not get out of the group stage, unfortunately.
Did they win a game in the group play,
Yeah,
or how did their first go at the in season tournament play out?
they went 3-1, but their point differential just was not as high as the Knicks.
Just shows you how stupid the rules are. This tournament is the only good takeaway that's been so far is we're the NBA season is in early December and we're getting playoff atmospheres at the end of games, and it's not even Christmas yet. So that's like all we're getting there. Other than that, the rules are ridiculous. The points difference, and I mean, what didn't they post something that had like 4 paragraphs of how teams could get in or get knocked out and points differences? Like people don't even want to read that.
Yeah, it's kind of just to the point where they throw the game at the audience and they're like, all right, this is where we're at. You got to understand it. I don't think anyone's really taking the time to understand what's going on.
Nobody wants to understand it. They're just like, all right, it's going to be a playoff atmosphere. Let's cheer on our team. And if we win, we'll figure out what happens next.
Yeah, exactly.
It's basically what it is. Like, all right, all we know is we got to win, and that's better than losing. that's all you can kind of look at. But yeah, good stuff there. So what's the Final Four? Like, are we at the Final Four where it's a semifinal on one side and a semifinal on the other?
It's the Pacers and Bucks, and then the Lakers and Pelicans.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I want to take the Pelicans. Yeah, fuck it, dude. It's the in-season tournament. Give me the Pelicans to beat the Lakers. Why am I trying to think about this? Who cares? Yeah, I'll take the Pelicans, which I think LeBron could totally take over like this little so-called Vegas bubble that we now have these Final Four teams in. Actually, no, let's keep it fun, dude. Pacers, Pelicans in-season tournament final.
The battle of the
That's who I'm
P's.
going with. That's who I'm picking, and that's what I want to see because F the NBA for trying to have this like crazy tournament, and then they go and we have those two teams battling it out for the in-season tournament championship, which is definitely not who they want because how bad will that look if it's Pacers, Pelicans, and the in-season tournament final? Definitely won't do good in terms of TV ratings. So that's my prediction. I hope it happens so they can say F you to the NBA and Adam Silver. And who cares? It's the in-season tournament. Let's see some upsets.
I like that prediction. I'm going to go with the Lakers and the Pacers with LeBron James hoisting the NBA Cup. Just because he's been downplaying it, but I really do think he wants to add an NBA Cup to his group.
Now that he's this close too, right? Like maybe in the beginning it was like, all right, like it's just a game, blah, blah. But now he's in that Vegas bubble, that in-season Vegas bubble. So he's definitely gonna have a little more juice and electricity to go along with that. But we've been on a rant here now for the last hour and a half. I think it's a good time to wrap it up. We always appreciate everybody following along for everything we have to offer here at 400. Look out for the NFL pod this Sunday. We'll be handing out picks as always. Looking to stay on the winning side of things. I think I personally had a little bit of a rougher weekend last weekend because, I had just so much excitement for that Eagles and Niners game. So I wasn't as locked into the slate, but I promise this weekend I will be locked in with the player props and more locked in with the whole slate in general. So look out for that. Looking to hand out a lot of winners this weekend. That's all I have, and that's all I got. So, Brian, you can shut us down here. I got nothing left. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Jake Browning's making the playoffs.